see if he's online yet. There he is.
There he is.
So Don can unmute his microphone. Then we'll bring him in. Hello, Don, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, Don. How are you doing? I'm going to bow out of this right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Cathy to interview you, Don. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, Cathy.
Joe, catch you later on.
Okay.
Fine job, as always.
Thank you.
And Cathy, I sent you a friend request on Facebook when you get back on Facebook.
Great. So you're one of those people that are social. That's great. So I tried to find out something about you today. I didn't have very much time, but I saw something about Radio New York. Tell us something about yourself, Don, so that I can. This is a virgin interview.
I'm a radio journalist, I guess. Every day I produce a 3-hour news magazine and a 30-minute newscast. So. Monday through Friday. The newscast airs on terrestrial radio, about maybe 50 stations around the U.S. The news magazine airs mostly on internet, outlets. It's through a group we set up, a bunch of ex-Pacifica producers called Community Public Radio. Our website is communitypublicradio.org. And so we have a group of producers in LA, for example, that used to be at KPFK Radio, that are running an internet station there. And it has an audience comparable to the terrestrial radio station, KPFK. I have a group in New York and DC, ex-producers from WPFW and WBAI, Pacifica. And scattered around the country, some others, and then a lot of terrestrial radio stations carry the newscast. I'd say most notably KGNU in Denver, Colorado, for example. So that's what I do days, and I do political commentary for RT and Press TV and some others, and struggle wherever else I think I can put my back into something where it looks useful.
Yeah, so maybe starting with what's just happening at the moment, to continue the conversation that I started with Joe. What's your feelings on what's been happening in Ecuador in the last couple of days?
Yeah, I saw the a piece at Sputnik about what had happened in the legislature there, and I agree that it seems likely that Lenin Moreno's dirty hand is on this in the back room somewhat. He can't be, he's been over solicitous to the United States since he took office. Now, he got elected because he had Rafael Correa's arms around him. He was supposed to be, he was the heir apparent. He was supposed to continue down that road. The road, the critical road in Latin America and the Caribbean has been, sort of the Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez route, Bolivarian route, independence, sovereignty, mutual support in those efforts, and the U.S. being the antagonist since Monroe Doctrine in the early 19th century. As soon as he gets in, he does a complete reversal on that, and is trying to be almost outdo Macri in Argentina, who, when he got elected, one of the first things he did was write a $12 billion check to the what do they call them, vulture funds, over some claim that they had against Argentina that no court or anyone else outside the United States recognized at all. It was liquidated in dissolved in the financial problems of Argentina, in the early part of the century. So, when you see Lenin Moreno wanting to kiss the collective behind of Washington and Wall Street, and he sits on the fate of Julian Assange, and then suddenly, sui sponte, some, rumblings start in the legislature to get Julian Assange out of the embassy. Well, it's really not even subtle.
It's not subtle at all.
Yeah.
So, but do you think he was some kind of sleeper cell, or he had a change of heart?
Oh, I don't know. The check cleared the bank. I don't know. We can only speculate. But what we do, we know what he's done, however. His motivation, look, imputing motive is always a fool's errand. We can never know. People themselves don't often know, completely why they do things. And guessing why he's doing it, somehow that may be useful, but I think the most useful thing is we know what he's doing and we got to stop it. And so, money's got to go. That's basically, it's for the people of Ecuador to decide, of course, but I think he's demonstrating to them on a daily basis that that's a fact, and they're going to have to figure out how to do it. The rest of us, what we can do is what we've always done: stand by, in solidarity. Something we can do to help. Okay, fine, and that's it.
Maybe he needs his government to vote against handing him over. Maybe he needs the people's support. Because I have a feeling that $1.1 billion deal, the oil deal, has a lot to do with this, sweetens it. So he can't be seen to have welched on the deal if the people vote against it, right? If there's such a big reaction that he can't actually do that because it's against the law as well.
There's so much that it's so complex too. You've got, all the cleanup that had to be done and has to be done still there from, who was it? Shell was the big polluter there. A couple of the American and British and European petroleum companies, devastated Ecuador like they've done all over the planet, really. Rape, pillage, and, consume monster that walks the earth and, thundering footsteps. So, and the people there, there've been court cases. There's been, rebellions, all kinds of activity around this for many years. It's a tough read for the rest of us, how people will vote on a particular, question that's put to them, because the context is so large. And
yes.
I don't have my finger on the pulse of the Ecuadorian population, like, say, Gallup or Gannett or whatever the local subsidiary is. And so, I can't say what would be the best way forward because I can't predict what the outcome would be. And then given that, so let's say the people decide against him and this track follows, of activity, of behavior, of, institutional behavior. Well, where does that go? Well, I don't know. We don't know where it's headed. So what's the outcome going to be ultimately, good, bad, or indifferent? It's very complex, beyond my ability to predict. What we can do is let people decide what they want to do themselves and support them and protect them from our government's interference. I mean, to me, my biggest job in terms of interfering in other countries is to keep my government the hell out of there. If I can do that, I'm doing them a favor, no matter what.
You'd be doing the whole world a favor, would you?
Okay. So,
multiple purpose. All right. So what do you think that? What do you think would need to happen so that we at least get it back to the point where he is not in solitary confinement anymore?
Julian. Well, I saw also at Sputnik and at your Facebook page a reference to it. The there was this attempt by essentially by the last Ecuadorian deputy foreign minister to sort of deputize Julian as an agent of the foreign ministry of Ecuador to empower him to go visit the Russian embassy as a deputy minister of Ecuador. So he would have diplomatic immunity and could travel from the Ecuadorian embassy to the Russian embassy, and then presumably, wherever after that. Even if he's just going to the Russian embassy, I assume it's a larger headquarters than, it's a bigger country. I assume they have a bigger flat in London, whatever. But the British government shot that down and basically said, look, set foot outside, we're snagging you. So, I don't think there's that kind of appetite in Lenny Moreno's government anyway to, provide opportunities like that for Julian. But clearly there's an antagonism that's, operating as policy from the British government that's going to have to be factored somehow. And I think, if you look at it strategically, there needs to be some lever against the British government, executing against Julian in whatever can be arranged for him, which means organizing tactically, means organizing some powerful forces in London where all of this would actually physically happen. Even if you're organizing 10,000 people to surround him so he can walk into the middle of a crowd, the crowd walks to the Russian embassy or Heathrow or wherever, and he gets the hell out of there. I don't know how you organize that, and I'm not advocating that someone organize that in case that's illegal, but I think the outcome of that would be one way he would, be liberated. So maybe people might want to investigate that as a possibility.
Well, you're not the first person to say that, because Cynthia McKinney said that as well. Mm-hmm. And she said that if that was happening, she would be there.
Yeah,
she would go.
I know she would too. She'd be calling me from another jail like she called me from the jail in Rafael last time when she got arrested by the Israelis.
Haven't we all almost had that happen to us?
I keep listening for rumblings in the driveway. You never know.
Yeah, so Cynthia's on later on.
I'm sorry.
Cynthia's coming on the vigil tonight.
Oh, good. Very good.
Tonight.
Yeah,
she'll be on later.
Yeah.
But go ahead. Go ahead with what you were going to say.
No. This morning, today, tonight, it's so difficult when we're doing something like this where it's global. This is true. This is a remarkable project. I got to hand it to Susie and to all the folks that are involved in this. Joe, you, everyone that's involved. This is an amazing project. Every month now, journalists all over the world, discussing this, helping to organize something to get Julian his liberty and to protect the rest of us, help each other, protect the rest of us from that kind of abuse by governments. I think it's a remarkable thing. And I'm really happy and honored to be able to participate in it.
So, how long have you been a supporter of WikiLeaks? So, pardon?
Since I first heard of it, shortly after it was, public. Here's a bunch of, a trove of documents that have been, taken from the U.S. government that are being released. Really? That they won me over that day. Said, "Oh, great!" It's like you got somebody like the janitor or somebody at the Pentagon has a key to the back door, and at night they, walk in, go into the file room, grab a box of files, run out with them, set up an office somewhere, stick the box on a conference table, and then send out a message. Hey, folks, I got a box of documents out of the Pentagon. Come look through it. I think it's fantastic. What happened with the Vietnam War, the main way people found out the truth to that was somebody did pretty much that in an FBI office, and they found out what was really going on. The back channel conversation about that, and it was a completely different story from what every newspaper, TV station, radio station, talking head, politician, priest, rabbi, shaman, everyone in all the official dum language that they were discussing this thing in, completely different from what the FBI and the Pentagon and everybody were discussing among themselves. And as soon as that got out, boom, there were people in the streets. And so this is a global version of that. And given the nature of information and information management in this period, as opposed to the 60s, where you physically had to put your hands on something to look at it, now, just shoot electrons over, not even wire, over the fiberglass or whatever, or through the air. It's like to the nth power, that kind of power to look behind the curtain at what's really happening. I think things are much worse than they were 50 years ago. And so it's much more urgent that we have the ability to do this. But thankfully we do. And we've got people like Julian and others that are willing to put their neck on the line to make sure that happens. And so, I think that's been my feeling about WikiLeaks since the first day I heard of WikiLeaks.
Mm. Yeah. And I've been thinking since Kristinn Hrafnsson was handed the position of editor-in-chief, the continued persecution of Julian is somewhat pointless. in a way, because it's not going to stop the organization. It really shows that there will probably always be a WikiLeaks. God help us if there isn't.
Well, I hope that that's true. And what's said is you cut down one and 1,000 will stand in their place. Whatever version of that you're familiar with. But the bad guys have a perception and some history to validate it that if they go in and say grab Julian and chop off his head in the public square, it's going to chill an awful lot of those 1,000. That they're going to say, well, maybe we can find another way of doing this struggle, and they quietly exit stage left. So, the fact that it appears that he's almost superfluous now because other people are running the show, I don't know that they necessarily see it that way. Historically, that's not how they see it. So I would have a plan B, namely rescuing him somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, because the whole purpose of the Unity for J movement is to not let it get to that. Yep. We've been talking about a doomsday clock for Julian, where midnight is where he gets kicked out of the embassy. Yep. And we saw it move forward again a few days ago. But there have been moments when it has been moved back as well.
Right.
Because of the actions of people like us and, outperforming the mainstream media, I've heard, because we are so numerous and so on it, on top of it. And because, the media has been handed over to the people. So it's just up to us to shout out and spread the word. Yeah, absolutely.
More ground for it. See, also, it's not a zero-sum game for Julian and for us with respect to Julian. It's one thing. First, we have to protect him from letting that clock strike 12, whatever they cart him off to prison or, some horrible fate like that. Another, though, is while he's tied up in the embassy, and this is definitely not lost on the bad guys, what he was doing prior to his having to run to the embassy, he can't do. He's done an awful lot from considering his situation. He did the TV program with RT. He's done a lot of public work. But he's under a severe disadvantage. God knows what he'd be doing if he were at liberty.
Yeah.
And the bad guys are afraid of what he'd be doing, and that's why he's not at liberty. And so, just because we're maintaining the status quo at 5 to 12 or whatever, doesn't mean look, I don't mean we should run ourselves down over it, but, let's liberate him and put him back to work. We're a lot better off if we can do that. And the other side of the coin is if he's stuck there forever, what's he, 60, in his 60s, late 50s, in his 60s, somebody's like my age, a little younger than me. Who wants to spend the end of their life in a closet in an embassy somewhere as opposed to, being able to bounce around the world? And he's done an awful lot of good work, maybe get some recognition, not, awards and trophies, but people every once in a while going, thank you, man. Keep it up. He doesn't even get to do that. He's got to look out the window and see if there's a paddy wagon outside. That's about what he gets to do during the course of a day.
That's true.
Put it in a
language. I've always thought that, Julian was always at his most powerful when nobody knew where he was. That's what they're afraid of. And when he used to come into the Frontline Club, on the screen and from an unspecified location, because his point of entry into the net could be anywhere, and such a master of disguise and But the other thing is that it must be very, very hard to accept not having full control over the narrative anymore. WikiLeaks, this amazing journalism, more scoops than the rest of the mainstream media combined. I was saying last time, too much too soon. And it's just like, it becomes very unpredictable for so many people, and they don't like that. Just the unpredictability of what WikiLeaks will discover, who will send things to WikiLeaks, because they're not active, they're passive. People send.
That's right. Here it is. Like I said, they just put it on the table in the conference room and hang a sign outside. The file box is in. That's basically it. And then people go do what they do with it, Some people use a piece of paper to light a cigar with or whatever. Others are going to figure out how to, make a new Wankel rotary engine. Somebody else is going to fly something to Mars or whatever. Somebody else is going to take down the U.S. government. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean,
do what they will with it. That's my point. Yeah.
That's right. But it was an Australian journalist, TV presenter, said that the genius of WikiLeaks is that, it kind of is a deterrent to doing the wrong thing, because that anybody in your, or having a safe Dropbox, anybody in your organization could be the one that brings you down.
Yeah. That
so in a way,
piece of paper might end up on WikiLeaks website. And do you want the world to see that? Yep.
Yes. And theoretically, therefore, people should behave better when they know that this could be, in the news very easily. And it could be the guy next door in the next office could have actually been, raised some moral objection. And, people who work, I know someone who works in Home Affairs, and I can't name names or anything, but, he is morally outraged probably at least 2 or 3 times a week by what happens, what's part of his job. But he's going to jail if he says anything. We have a world where, WikiLeaks appears people can theoretically denounce the crimes, and then at the same time there arises the fear of the insider threat, cameras everywhere, surveillance on government employees, keystrokes recorded, everything to prevent the truth from getting out. So there's a bit of a war on both sides, really, isn't there?
Yep. Yeah, it's what you're describing is basically an end to impunity for some people, at least a theoretical end to it. They have to consider, perhaps I don't have impunity, perhaps somebody's going to blow the whistle on me, and that's a bad thing for me if I'm doing really bad stuff. And we know there are people doing really bad stuff.
Well, that's right. John Pilger said that when you combine secrecy with impunity, that's when bad things happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, impunity thrives in secrecy. You need it. I mean, people like to do things that, be notorious when they're doing them, but you really need, secrecy is like fertilizer for the kind of things that impunity protects and shields. So I think that one of the things that we have to keep, in the forefront is looking at the response to things that have happened already with this crack in their official narrative, Brexit, Trump, all these different plebiscites in different places that didn't turn out the way they were supposed to. There are many complexities to these things, but you can see that the response from power is strictly over their loss of control of the narrative, the instruction set narrative. In other words, this is what's going to happen next, and people turn around and say, no, it ain't, and they do something else. That really, I mean, look at the insane reaction of the media in the U.S. to the 2016 election. The Russians somehow with $80 and a couple of deposit bottles to be returned were able to make a strategic media buys in Facebook and turn around the entire Western media narrative, the $2 billion budget, all kinds of other stuff, and put Trump in the White House. Same about Brexit. They said the same thing about Brexit, and a number of other, elections, referenda, whatever around the world. And they are furious. They're scared, really. That's what's driving it.
So, he's been asked to testify, Assange. How do you think that will pan out in relation? Do you think that will find some resolution, if the location, because it wasn't very clear whether Assange was requested to come to the United States, but it was kind of saying that it was, WikiLeaks said that they were seriously considering the possibility as long as Assange's safety was guaranteed. That sort of has been dropped a little bit. That's disappeared from the news. Do you know anything about that? Because that's happening in your country.
I haven't seen any updates of it. And I didn't really understand it when I saw the reports you're referring to. I understood the reports, but it didn't make any sense to me. You have a number of elements here. One, the enabling case that had him, have to seek refuge in the embassy, from Sweden, right? I believe that's closed. That's gone away, right? There's no prosecution from there. The witnesses have pretty much recanted, and I believe that's the status of it the last time I looked. And so, and there's no official indictment in the U.S. that I'm aware of for, being a whistleblower. And so, I don't know what they could be talking about with him if it's not those two cases. They want to have him over for tea? I don't know. So when I was looking at them talking about interviewing him, I was thinking to myself about what? And I didn't know the answer to that really, and I still don't. So,
well, I mean, I had the impression that it was in relation to the Mueller inquiry. That there was some evidence that he could give there about also. We're all speculating, aren't we? But I think isn't it the House Intelligence Committee that wants to hear what he has to say, but we're not even sure about what. That's right.
Right. Don't know. I don't know. I don't know what any.
It's going to be a bit quiet.
There's the the whole Russiagate thing. There is that.
It's the Russiagate thing. Yes. So the last time when I was talking to Kristinn, interviewing Kristinn, his mother. There was that theory that, if he went and maybe Trump wants him to testify because he might provide evidence that Trump had nothing to do with any kind of collusion, and Kristinn said, well, who knows? President Trump can change his mind every day. So let's hope it's on a good day. But it's been quite a while now. It's been 2 months. And that hasn't progressed. We haven't had any news at all. It was at the beginning of August where that subpoena came out.
Julian's role in that case would be, to present exculpatory evidence that, Trump did not have contact with Russia over these things, and nor did I act as an intermediary for that because I didn't get him from Russia because I got him from him. He's already said, and they've already said, we're not going to divulge our source. Now, I know they've suggested maybe, some intermediate step, or maybe the source itself is going to say, I was the source, and then, WikiLeaks confirms it. That might be a way of doing it, and then that would be exculpatory evidence for Trump's people. In other words, Russians had nothing to do with what Trump ended up with. It came from Bob over here that gave it to Julian and WikiLeaks, who gave it to Trump or published it or whatever. So, maybe something on the order of that would be what they're talking about doing. But, I don't know. If it's Seth Rich, for example, that was the source, he's dead. So I don't think he's going to come back and say, I now give you permission. So, maybe people feel comfortable with the idea that something I give you in confidence, the confidence is till death do us part, and after that, you're relieved of confidentiality obligation. That may be what they're thinking too. And I don't know. That may well be a reasonable approach to the problem. I don't really know. I haven't given it much thought.
Well, in that case, I'm surprised that they're not indicting or asking for testimony from Craig Murray, because Craig Murray went over there to pick up the material and brought it back over. He's already written about that. He Craig Murray's a former British ambassador to Uzbekistan, and great writer and great activist now as well, but and whistleblower as well, famous whistleblower. So Craig has already said that he was the intermediary.
Right. So there you go. So that worked. Yeah.
They ignored it. I know that doesn't fit. That doesn't fit into the narrative. But Craig Murray could be questioned, possibly even in Julian's place. I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, there's that too. If, let's say, someone showed up, for the whole Russian narrative, said, you know what, it wasn't Russia, it was us, whoever that might be, little green men, South Pago, I don't know, whatever. And here's a trove of evidence, documenting that they're too invested in the Russia narrative to let it go. Nuke South Pago, whatever, hide the little green men in Nevada or something, and not tell us because they're so heavily invested in it. I don't know. Yeah.